All right, so this is a question we've been really itching to talk about for a really long time, and it's what's the playoff rotation? What do you guys want to see in game one of the hopefully the NLCS?
DeGrom.
Whoa, really? I was
Yeah.
thinking we put Darren Ruff in there as our number one starter.
Yeah, he did okay. He did okay.
Hey,
Um,
I'd
Wait,
rather him
I
pitch
think
than hit.
I think the first three, no debate. I think the real topic of conversation is number four. We're in all likelihood probably not going to see a fifth starter until the NLCS if we make it that far, just because at that point you got guys who are more tired, just the way things kind of bear out. So it's really a question of 4 and 5. So that's what we got to figure out. Is it Walker or Carrasco you want to see in the first round? I'm going to say Walker. I I have my problems with Walker. I think the second half Walker is a completely different animal than the first half, but he has been really really good these last three starts. Use that splitter a lot less, and there's been great effect. So I'm going to go with that. Where we've kind of mentioned the stat a lot, but Carrasco against playoff teams not good, flat out not good. And the age thing's part of that. I'm sure he's 36. I want to say. And despite the playoff experience, he hasn't been to the playoffs since I want to say that run with Cleveland in 2020, I think, with them in the COVID year. But like they lost. They didn't make it that far, if at all. So I don't know. I just trust Walker more. Carrasco's a guy where I said in the chat of within the first two innings, you know what type of night it's going to be with him. Walker has some of that, but I think he does have more upside with the stuff and everything we've seen at the top of his game to really be a shutdown starter.
Yeah, I was gonna. I know earlier in the chat I was gonna write Trevor May as my fourth guy, have him open games. But after thinking of it, and you guys said, I know you said, Josh, you like Taiwan, and after looking at Taiwan and his like starts against the teams that are playoff teams, he's done relatively well. Like the one start against the Dodgers, it wasn't amazing, but he kept us in. He kept us in at 5 earned runs. I mean, not 5.1 innings, only 3 earned runs, 3 hits only. He's just things like that against the Yankees, another playoff team with World Series hopes. 5 innings, 2 earned runs, only 4 hits allowed. I mean, obviously the one against Atlanta. I think besides really that one start against Atlanta, he's been nothing but spectacular for the Mets. I don't think he's had, like looking at it now, he's only had 3 starts where he's let up more than 4 earned runs. And I know 4 earned runs isn't necessarily crazy, but not everybody's Jacob DeGrom that pitches every single start with 3 earned runs or less. But Walker, he's gonna give you a really good 6 or 7 inning start, and he has that potential, like you said, Josh. But I like he could give you that start, but I think you know what you're gonna get with Walker. So I think that's why you got to give Taiwan Walker the 4 spot instead of Carrasco or Trevor May or Peterson or elsewhere after those guys.
I originally, when I was thinking about this question, I was leaning towards Cookie, mostly because it's a great nickname and I'm a Cookie monster. Um, he has the playoff experience and he gets more strikeouts than Taiwan, and strikeouts are huge in the playoffs. Just be able to get guys out of the plate with no contact, like that's big. But who's to say you can't that fourth game we don't do some kind of style of a bullpen game where you might see both of them, or you might see a Trevor Williams and then either a Taiwan or a Carlos Carrasco for a little bit. I think the depth that we have makes that fourth spot like really flexible. Taiwan checks a lot more boxes of like the good pitching stats you like to see over Cookie. I don't know. I'm gonna go with Cookie for that fourth spot. He doesn't. I don't know. It's just like he doesn't have to. It's not like a definite like. Unless he completely collapses, but like, who knows? Maybe playoff Cookie is a lot. Against good teams is better than regular season Cookie against good teams. Like we don't know what it looks like yet. But the fact that he's been there before, and I know Taiwan does not like to pitch night games because he hates to, like, he's literally said this. He's like, I don't like pitching night games because I have to wait all day to pitch, and it like builds up in his head. maybe Cookie's more able to adapt to that kind of environment because Taiwan's not going to get a 3 o'clock start in a divisional series or a championship series or a World Series, maybe.
I wish you would. I love afternoon baseball. It's the best.
It is. It is.
I think there's 1 day game per series. So there you go, Taiwan.
So hopefully he falls. I think.
But
with
DeGrom's
Josh,
better in day games. He's lights out, so I'd rather DeGrom get that.
so this is actually Josh like, well, there's not much to talk about the rotation because we have the top three kind of settled out, but the order, like, do you pitch Scherzer or DeGrom first? Like, I thought that was a legitimate question.
I mean, it's DeGrom, I think.
Yeah, I would go with DeGrom just because he's been here longer and he's the homegrown Met, first time since 2016. You got to give it to the guy.
Like, I see, I said the same thing, and I was honestly expecting some of you guys to say Scherzer, so it's a little upsetting. But like, I don't know. Go back to like, I was talking to one of my friends from Boston, and he's a big Red Sox fan, but his dad grew up in the tri-state area, so he's a big Mets and Giants fan. I don't know why he didn't adopt those teams. Anyway,
I mean, I think he's okay. You know, I think instead of a
no,
Jets fan, he's a Pats fan, and
it's all right. Well, his dad's a Giants fan anyway, but this is beside
oh,
beside the
Garrett
point.
Wilson.
So we're talking about the playoffs rotation, whatever, and he's like, oh, well, it's DeGrom. Like, he hasn't even like pitched in the playoffs. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, he was on the World Series team. Like, do you know 2015 Game 1 and Game 5 of the NLDS? Like, that's where DeGrom like became DeGrom. With the long hair, striking out Justin
13
Turner
times.
and Adrian Gonzalez and Yasiel Puig, like, and Andre Ethier were on those Dodgers teams. Like, going up against Zach Greinke when he was a Dodger and he was a menace. Like, that's where DeGrom became DeGrom. That's why I wanted him to start Game 1. And then I thought Scherzer for Game 2, like, if we go down 0-1 because, say, the offense doesn't show up for DeGrom like it always does, I feel like there's no way in hell Scherzer would lose and go down 0-2. Like, it's like a guarantee. Like, he's like kind of a safety net. But there was something too about like maybe you have Scherzer start Game 1 because then later in the series, if you need him to like come in off short rest and like in a relief effort, you'd rather have him than DeGrom.
True.
that's interesting. I think
That's a really good point, actually.
That was one thing I heard, and I was like, I don't know.
That's a really good point, actually.
But I think DeGrom could function as a reliever more because I think with Scherzer, we saw it in Milwaukee of what he wants to be. He can attack the zone, strike out a bunch of people, and make it look effortless. But that's not primarily what his game is. You know, it's something else. I think DeGrom is more of a guy if it's like, I need 3 outs. I think DeGrom is the best stuff among maybe anyone in the major leagues. So if we're going to talk about like a bullpen situation, I would much rather have Jake because he's just so lethal. And that's not to discredit that, but I think Scherzer's a starter through and through. I'd love to know what his last like relief appearance was because I honestly can't think of one. So, I mean, I can't rule with DeGrom either, in all fairness, but I would just side with the stuff in that situation of like, give me 3 outs.
That's also another great point. I don't know. The only thing about DeGrom is his arm going to be able to withstand that? Because I know, like Scherzer, I feel like he can get those 3 outs just like that way too, like get 3 strikeouts because he has it in him. He can just wheel back and give it all he has. But I do think DeGrom, like you just said, like if it's later in the postseason, like if we get later in the postseason, like later what I'm talking about, I don't want to say it, but if we're later in the postseason and DeGrom's an option out of the pen or Scherzer's out of the pen, and it's the last series, you go DeGrom. Screw rest. You're trying to win, but earlier in the postseason, I could see why they would want Scherzer in that role more than DeGrom. But later in the postseason, I could see them switching.